I've made these for things that I've found in the garden and a few extra little props that I've bought just to add a little bit of colour. So you can do exactly the same. I'm going to show you how to do exactly that with some traditional methods as well as some more cost-effective alternatives, such as how I've made this one. So this one has cost me maybe about £1 to £1.50, so super cheap compared to what I might pay in the shops for something like this, maybe £10 to £15. So I'll show you how I've done this with things that you can find in your garden, in nature, and possibly even something that you've got just lying around the house that you can put some use to. So just to run through what you need to make a wreath, I'll run through the essentials as well as some optional extras that you can get or make depending on the look and feel that you're going for it. So of course the first thing that you need is the greenery, so this will make up the majority of your wreath. So you'll need wire to affix the natural elements to your wreath frame. So there are many different things that you can use. So florist wire comes in many different forms, so this is just galvanized or silver type wire. Very malleable, easy to bend and sort of fold into place and hold things in place. It's easy to cut as well, so you don't need pliers. You can use a strong pair of scissors and they will cut that fine. Then there's bind wire as well, so this looks like yarn, but it's not. So the great thing about this is it's wire, so it holds its shape, it's very strong, but it's coated in or covered in like a craft type paper. So the brown and sort of natural vibe of this goes really well with the plants that we'll be using. So it really blends in and helps to keep that natural vibe. And you can also use, if you can find it, this type of florist wire. So these are green, if you can see that, green almost stems of wire. And these are a little bit thicker than the silver wire that I've just shown you, but they are still malleable and cuttable with scissors. And again, they're green, so they're designed to blend in with plants. So a great way to affix things to your wreath frame without them necessarily being seen. So I've tried to use a mix of both of these. And as I mentioned a moment ago, you'll need something to cut the wire. So the wires that I've used are cuttable with scissors. So a strong pair of scissors, sharp pair of scissors should be fine. If you didn't want to use scissors, if you did have pliers to hand, you can use pliers. And these do also come in handy with manoeuvring the wire, so they can be quite fiddly. I made that one that I showed you earlier just with my fingers, but they can be quite fiddly to get the little bits of wire round. And also the wire can be sharp on the edges too. So if you do have any pliers to hand, they could be beneficial to use. So the last essential thing that you'll need to make a wreath is the wreath frame. So of course you need something for all of the foliage to hold onto. So there are many different forms that you can get these in, and different ones have benefits for different types of wreaths that you're making. So this is a polystyrene wreath. As you can see, it's very lightweight, and this is good for lightweight wreaths, for example. So depending on what you're putting on it, these are also good for artificial wreaths, as you can sort of glue or pin things into this. This was quite cheap. It was only £1, down from £2. It's still got the reduction sticker on it, and I bought it specifically for this video. Let's try and balance that on there. And this one, as you'll see, is maybe more fitting with the wreath that we're making today. This is a grapevine wreath frame, and I'm guessing that means it's made out of grapevine, as it's called a grapevine wreath, or maybe it's just called that because it looks like that and it's made of willow or salix or something like this. This was £5.49, so a bit more expensive, but as I said, it's got a better look and feel to it, and more work has gone into making this. And you can get plastic frames as well, which you then wrap in wire to make the framework for your natural elements to hold on to. But I did say that I'd show you the cost-effective way that I have used to make my wreath. So I didn't actually use any of the items that I've shown you that I've purchased. I will do, just to make use of them as I bought them. But I wanted to try something out to see if I could imitate the plastic wreath frames that you buy in the shops, but actually use something that I already had in the house. So this is the wreath that I made earlier, or showed you earlier, and this is the back of it, as you can see. So just like I said, the plastic frame that you wrap in wire, and then you've got the framework for the foliage to hold on to. This is actually, as you can see I'm holding in my other hand, a plastic sweet tub top. So I'll show you exactly how I've done that, and we'll get to making the wreath in just a second. So the non-essentials but nice to haves, if you can find them, or maybe if you make them yourself, are some natural elements just to decorate the foliage. So you'll have seen on mine I've got some dried orange slices. So I bought these were I think £1.39 for a pack of 15. They were on sale, so that makes them about 10p each. You can make these, just buy an orange, slice it up, put it in the oven at a low heat for about a couple of hours to dry them out. Pinecones, again you can find these, or acorns, any of those sort of natural elements, or berries even. that you can source in your garden or in the countryside, again depending on where you live, and other things like cinnamon sticks that I've got here. Other things that you might choose to get are some artificial elements depending on the look and feel that you're going for. So I really like these. These are the sort of berries, and these are artificial, so they're only like little polystyrene balls that are in this sort of glossy red glaze. If you can't find any pine cones, for example, or natural elements, you can buy them, again, fairly cheaply. This big bag was about £3.75, and these are actually scented, so these have got cinnamon and clove scent on them, so they smell amazing, really bring out that festive vibe, and those are what I've put on the wreath that I've used. So it's got the orange, the cinnamon sticks, and the scented pine cones, so it smells amazing. So if you didn't want to try and find all of your own props, or even buy all of these separate individual elements, then you can buy these little kits that have everything that you need, and these are really, really affordable. So this was £2.39 and it has everything that you need. You still need your foliage, but then these little props include acorns, berries, pine cones, orange slices, cinnamon sticks, and some twine, and of course they will differ depending on the brand. Another thing that I've used with mine, with using the plastic frame, was some craft tape. So this I used to wrap around the plastic, cover the plastic up, and give it that sort of natural colour to blend in with the natural elements that we'll be adding to it. Ribbon, you might find this useful if you want to add bows or some extra decoration. This was only 69p from the same sort of store that I got all the other elements from. And then lastly, some sort of adhesive. So I've used a hot glue gun to affix some of the smaller elements to my wreath. So if you don't have a hot glue gun, then any other sort of strong and fast drying adhesive will be perfectly fine, and then you can stick the smaller elements on, because you'll only need a small amount of adhesive if you decide to do that. So just an important note when you are collecting your foliage or props, make sure that you've got permission to collect whatever it is you're collecting. If it's your own garden, then that's fine. If it's someone else's, get permission before taking anything. If it's the countryside or public land, you should be okay to gather things up. However, remember, only take what you need. So you are taking from nature. So if you're making one wreath, for example, only take enough of the foliage for one wreath. With taking greenery off the plants as well, never take critical growth. Take from the lower end of the plant or the back of the plant, for example. Hopefully most of the foliage that you'll be getting will be from larger plants anyway, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. They should be well established. For example, I've got eucalyptus here from a eucalyptus tree that I've got in the garden, and I've also got rosemary here, so I've got a massive rosemary bush in the garden, so very lucky to have that, and that's going to make the majority of the foliage in my wreath. You can of course use fir, spruce, pine, those different things, traditional Christmas type tree foliage that you might be able to find. But if you do have a natural Christmas tree as well, a great way to sort of reuse some of that is you always have the back of the tree that no one will ever see. So if you can collect a little bit from the back or the bottom of the tree that no one's going to notice is gone, you've got some extra foliage there that you can use as well. So have a look around, see what is still green over the festive period, and what you might be able to add to your wreath. So I hope that's provided some inspiration for what you can use on your wreath. So now let's get making the wreath with the method that I showed you, so that anyone can really make this. If you've got any sweet tubs or round tub lids that you can use without having to go and buy a wreath frame, a dedicated wreath frame, let's get making the wreath. So all I'm going to do is cut out the centre so that we've got a ring to create the frame. All I would say is if you are doing the same, be really careful with the scissors, as it can be quite tough to get through and cut round. Also the edges of the plastic can be sharp, so you might also choose to wear gloves just to protect you from that until it's taped up, which we'll do as the next step. If you are trying to get your scissors through the plastic, never ever do it on your person, so on your lap for example, as the scissors can just slip through or slip off. So I always try and put them on a firm surface but with something soft underneath, so on a carpet or a rug, so that it gives enough pressure for the scissors to go through, but then it stops as soon as it's through. Or if you have hard flooring, maybe put it on a towel for example, and then push it through that way. And always aim them away from yourself so there's no risk of them slipping back once they go through. So there we go, that's the centre cut out. It does take a little bit of hard work to get the initial cut going, but once you've got it going, the momentum will carry it round. So now that I've got this, these edges are still sharp and this is bright blue, so I don't want this in my wreath. So I'm going to use this natural craft tape just to run it through and round the outside, as you saw the back of the wreath earlier. You don't need to use craft tape, you can use any type of tape. The main point of this is to cover the sharp edge and also to just change the colour. all I'm going to do is stick that on there and then just run this round in a looping fashion all the way around until it's completely covered. So that's the first step finished. We've covered this in tape now, so the sharp edges are all covered, and that's a much better colour, particularly for the natural elements that we're going to use, rather than the bright blue that it was. However, we still need the actual framework of the wire to be able to attach the foliage to. So I'm going to put that on now. We're going to do exactly the same with the wire that we've got. Whichever wire that you've got as well, we'll do the same. And just wrap it round through the centre, all the way around the outside, so it creates a frame or grid of wire, which I'll show you once it's done. So you should have a malleable wire. All I've done is twisted it on there, or you can tie a knot in it if that makes it more secure. And as you go around, you want to pull it really tight. So there's the finished frame. You'll see that the wire has been wrapped all the way around it. I'll be using this side for the front where the foliage is going to go, and you'll see that the wire is wrapped maybe every ½ centimetre to a centimetre around it. So that gives us plenty of availability for us to attach the bits of foliage on. So let's do that next. So when it comes to adding the foliage, I find this is a little bit like painting, that you start with the first coat, second coat and so on until you build up to the finished result. So with making the wreath, you can of course go straight into using your main foliage, and then as long as you use enough of it and overlap enough, you'll cover the frame. I don't really like to waste any of the foliage that I've got, so I've actually cut some of the main foliage bits down to the same length so that it's symmetrical and looks sort of nice and even as we go round, and it's a little bit of an easier job toward the end when it comes to tidying up. I've got offcuts that I can use, so I'm going to use that as a first coat or first layer if you like, and stick those around the frame just to cover some of this brown up and add some greenery. One thing to note as we're putting the foliage on, don't worry too much about how neat or tidy it is to begin with. As I said, there is time to trim it down, to add bits in if there are any gaps, and move things around. So you might want to try laying things out on it first before you stick anything down, and then once you've got a layout that you like, a look that looks right for the aesthetic that you're going for, then you can start to stick things down. There are a couple of ways of doing this too. So I've seen people that just use a continuous length of wire and sort of hold the various bits in place with a continuous length of wire attaching as they go. I prefer to attach things individually with little pieces of wire, and then that just helps if I want to move something around and helps me to see it build bit by bit. So let's do that now. So to attach your greenery, it's a bit of a repetitive task, but it's incredibly easy to do. So all you're going to do is position wherever you want the greenery to go, then using some additional wire, just hook it under the item that you've got, under one of the pieces of the wire on the frame, so that obviously it then attaches to it. And as you've got the wire, all you need to do is then just twist that round, just like you would the cable bag ties, those sorts of things, and then tuck the excess wire underneath back into the frame, and just make sure that that's nice and tight and secure on there. So there's our first bit of greenery. Now I'm going to carry on with that all the way around, just overlapping some of that with the first layer. So I've just added some of the odd ends just to add a bit of greenery to start with and cover some of that brown tape. And now I've got the first layer of main foliage here, which is the Christmas tree. All I'm going to do is very much the same thing, is attach one of these with a piece of wire and maybe let some of the foliage come off over the edge to start getting that nice fuller wreath look. And then with the second piece, I'm going to overlap it so that it covers the end and starts to overlap the edge again. The third piece, just continue all the way around, and as you'll see there, start to get a much fuller wreath. So there's the first layer of foliage done, but there are still some gaps, and that's where the main layer of foliage on top will come in. So for the main foliage on the wreath, what you actually want to do is group that up into little bunches, and then we'll do what we've done just a minute ago, and we'll add them to the wreath with the wire, and we'll overlap them in much the same way. But as we're using bunches, it'll hopefully give a much fuller wreath and be a little bit faster. So I'm going to put a little bit of wire around the bottom to hold it together. So if you do the same with your foliage, hopefully you will find that easier too. So now I've got all of my bunches sorted. I've got the rosemary bunches and the ones with the eucalyptus. I'm going to do exactly the same as I did with the previous foliage and start to add it on with pieces of wire linked to the frame and overlap it as I go. So I'm going to stick the eucalyptus one, for example, here, making sure that there's overlap on top so that we get that nice full wreath effect. Then the rosemary, and when I overlap it, the top of the next bunch is going to overlap the bottom end of the first bunch. And I'm just going to do exactly the same as I go, just alternating with the different bunches that I've got. So those first 3 bunches are all attached now, and each one is covering the wire from the last one. One point to note with the wire is to make sure that it is pulled really tight as you can, just to make sure it holds all of the pieces in place. So I'm going to do the other 5 and then show you once I've finished, but it's really starting to take shape and starting to fill up now. So almost done. As it comes to the last one, as we've been overlapping the ends as we've gone around, all you need to do with the last one is just lift the first one up ever so slightly, the top of the bunch, tuck the end underneath, and then just make sure the top is covering the penultimate bunch that you've just put down. And then hopefully that should then give you a full wreath. So once that's in place, I'll actually put some wire on that in a second to hold that in place. And there we have the final wreath. So everything's been secured in place. One thing that I did notice once I'd finished putting all of the bunches in, and which you might notice yourself as you're putting your own bunches on your wreath, is sometimes there might be some that are a little bit looser than others, so I've had to put a couple of extra bits of wire on a couple of the bunches just to make sure that they are secure in place. And also I did notice a couple of little spots down here in the centre where it wasn't quite covered, the frame wasn't quite covered, so I've just used some smaller pieces of the foliage that I had left over, and I've just tucked those in and tied those down just to fill that space and to make sure that the frame is completely covered. So I could leave this as it is with just the foliage, or I could add some extra elements to it. So what I might do is add some orange slices and the cinnamon sticks, just as I did with the previous one, maybe some pine cones as well, so that we can just add a little bit more colour onto it. I've actually changed my mind, and what I think I will do is use some of these berries instead, just to add a little bit of extra colour and also make it a little bit different from the first wreath that I did. And the great thing about these is these are perfect for any floristry, as they come with the pins already in there, or the wire already attached. And with this, as I've already got sort of the frame, I can just slot them in as and where I want them. So I'm going to try and make it a little bit symmetrical, make sure that the wire goes all the way to the bottom, and just do the same as I go round. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and put another one up here. And there's the final wreath. So as I said, all I've done is put in some of those berries at intervals. I've chosen 3 just to add a bit of extra colour with the pins that are on the back, and just slotted them in into the frame, and the same with the acorns as well as. So I've done that just to add a little bit of contrast or a difference to the first one that I made, which is here with the orange cinnamon sticks and cones. So both of these have been made in exactly the same way. The sweet tub tops with the backs cut out, covered in tape with the wire, and the same foliage which I got free from the garden, the rosemary and the eucalyptus for contrast, along with some of the back of the Christmas tree that I was able to cut off without it being noticeable, and use that as some of the lower level foliage to cover the frame. So for about £1 to £1.50 maybe each of these, considering you'd pay maybe 10 to 15 for a small wreath like this in a shop, I've made these for things that I've found in the garden and a few extra little props that I've bought just to add a little bit of colour. So you can do exactly the same. So there's still time before Christmas, so go out foraging, go and find things in your garden, find the sweet tubs if you've eaten the sweets, or even if you've not, maybe that's an excuse to eat all of the sweets so that you can take the top off, and then cut those out and create your own wreaths. So I hope you found this video useful in showing you how to make a wreath. If you have given it a go, or maybe in the past or from this video, let us know how you get on in the comments below. I'd love to find out. If you have got any other tips on how to make a wreath and ways to find things to put on the wreath or make it with, then share them in the comments below so that other viewers can benefit from them. If you have found it useful, please consider hitting the subscribe button, as I'll have new videos every week, usually on houseplant related topics, whether this one's been slightly different in bringing plants in from the garden to make the wreaths with, so a little bit crafty, but the channel is Grow Your Wellbeing, and craft is a great way to look after your wellbeing, a great way to relax, get creative, and just focus on the craft at hand. So I hope you have found it useful. If you do have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll respond to everyone, and as always, thank you for watching Grow Your Wellbeing.